The second pillar calls on the U.S. government and civic organizations to promote good governance and help expand civic participation in Muslim countries.
When they complain about their government, that's what they complain about, corruption and things don't work. They just want things to work. And the corruption is all the way down, and lack of efficient functioning of institutions, of state institutions that are supposed to serve them. So
when Americans talk about promoting democracy, you shouldn't think first and foremost about having an election. There are certain things that you have to have in order to get to the point of being a successful functioning democracy. You have to have respect for women and minority groups, and you have to have viable political parties that actually represent the interests of people. You have to have certain protections of civil liberties, access to media. There are a whole bunch of things that have to happen that we again call the preconditions of democracy.
It's very difficult when you're talking about trying to transform societies, when you're trying to produce what amounts to a kind of social, economic, political development. It's very important that you do so on the basis of institutions.
The third pillar calls on the U.S. government and business leaders to help catalyze job-creating growth in Muslim countries.
The people that travel through the region will know well that if they were given a list of choices, what do you want to change now? I think number one would be the acute conflicts. Number two would be the economic realities. I want my kid to get a job. I want the education that he has to mean something. I want there to be an economy that's functioning and transparent and free.
Some of these countries, as I think we allude here, have as much as 50% of their gross domestic product captured by the gray market. The way ahead on that is to reduce those barriers to entry in such metrics as how many days or weeks or months does it take to license a business, how effective is contract enforcement, and so on.
This third pillar calls for economic policy reforms and new investments to help generate jobs in Muslim countries. Currently, even bankruptcy laws make it highly risky to do something as simple as open a business.
We mentioned reforming the insolvency and bankruptcy regimes in these countries to decriminalize bankruptcy. For goodness sakes, if you put your capital at risk and go bankrupt, you're thrown into jail and you're a criminal.
This third pillar also recommends the use of trade agreements to reward economic reform and spur investment.
So if we're serious about seeing the Islamic community grow and prosper, free trade agreements, gold standard free trade agreements, I think is indispensable to allow the nascent economic well-being of these countries in the Islamic community to be unfettered, to grow.
Finally, the fourth pillar. It calls on Americans and Muslims around the world to improve mutual respect and understanding through education, exchange, and interfaith dialogue. After the leadership group was formed, the U.S. Muslim Engagement Project also organized citizen dialogues across the country. While those sessions showed that Americans face a steep learning curve about Islam and the diversity of Muslim cultures, people also expressed a yearning to learn more.
The results of the dialogue were then fed back into the leadership group discussions so that when the leaders were discussing what can change, they were able to take into consideration thoughts and concerns that were expressed.
To address Americans' need to learn more, the U.S. Muslim Engagement Project recommends dramatically expanding cross-cultural education and people-to-people exchanges.
I come from that generation of practitioners who used to say, X problem is complicated enough. Let's not bring God and religion into it. But the more that I learned, the role of religion is very large, and therefore our diplomats and our politicians need to become versed in the religious background of various conflicts that we have and develop the right language to be able to have a dialogue.
To commence that dialogue, the report issues a call for action to the next U.S. president, specifically recommending that he speak to the need for improving relations with the Muslim world in the 2009 inaugural address. Then, in the administration's first months, announce and start to implement a strategy to improve U.S. Muslim relations, reaffirm the U.S. prohibition of torture, begin a major diplomatic effort to resolve regional conflicts and promote security and cooperation in the Middle East, engaging with Iran and seeking permanent resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict should have the highest priority. Convene a business-government summit on economic reform in the Middle East, and create an international initiative for Americans and Muslims around the world to learn about each other's history, culture, and societies. Taken together, the 150-page report with its 4 pillars and presidential call to action present a dramatic, perhaps monumental challenge. But the leadership group says it is one the United States must take on.
This is the risk for our children and grandchildren for the 21st century, and we haven't gotten it right. In many cases, we've gotten it profoundly wrong. We've created a situation in which a billion people in this world are at risk of hating the United States. Now, they don't yet, but increasing numbers of them do. The fact is we're going to have to change course.
We have a stake in ensuring that those who believe in creating a more hopeful future, a future that is a more tolerant future, a future that is governed by non-corruption and the embodiment of justice, is something that is not only good for the people in those countries, but it's also very good for the United States.